Riya Malhotra, Arjun Varma, and Samar Khanna. 3 lives destined to collide in a nightmare that would shatter the quiet of a New Jersey apartment, exposing secrets, danger, and a past no one could have imagined. Please subscribe for daily new update of crime story and watch till end. Riya Malhotra had always imagined her move to New Jersey as the start of a stable, peaceful life. After years of hard work in India, she had finally secured a job that allowed her to support her family back home. Her days were simple: wake up, work, eat, sleep. The routine was predictable, but it kept her grounded. Yet living alone in a foreign country often felt isolating, and the quietness of her apartment reminded her of how far she was from home. That was when she decided it made sense financially and emotionally to rent out her extra bedroom. She posted a short listing online without giving the decision too much thought, believing it would help her save money and maybe give her some company. Within a day, she received a message from someone named Arjun Varma. He introduced himself as a newly transferred Indian student looking for temporary accommodation while he settled into his new university. His messages were polite, respectful, and almost overly formal. Riya felt a small sense of comfort knowing he was also from India. It made him feel less like a stranger and more like someone she could relate to. After a brief video call to verify his identity and discuss basic details, she agreed that he could move in the following week. Arjun arrived carrying only a few bags and a quiet demeanor. He thanked her repeatedly for giving him a chance, explaining that housing had been difficult to secure since he had arrived suddenly due to unexpected circumstances. Riya didn't pry into what those circumstances were. People had different stories, different struggles. She believed everyone deserved a fair chance. From the moment he stepped inside her apartment, Arjun behaved like a tenant anyone would be lucky to have. He kept to himself mostly, never intruded into her personal space, and was careful about the house rules without ever being asked twice. Riya found herself slightly amused at how serious he was about not making noise, often walking lightly as if the floor might complain. He spent long hours away from the apartment, usually returning close to midnight, saying he had been studying at the library. Riya was used to strict study routines from her own student years, so she didn't see anything unusual about it. Yet, small details began to stand out over the next few weeks. She would sometimes wake up in the early hours and hear soft pacing from his room, like someone trying to calm their nerves. Once she noticed his hands trembling when he was making tea in the kitchen. On another morning, she saw a long scratch on his forearm that looked too deep to be brushed off as a casual injury. When she asked about it, he muttered a vague explanation and quickly wore a jacket even though it was warm inside. The unease was subtle, a quiet whisper in the back of her mind rather than a loud alarm. She told herself that everyone had their secrets, and adjusting to a new country was stressful for anyone. But despite convincing herself, she couldn't shake the strange feeling that Arjun carried more than just luggage into her home. There was something heavy in his silence, something unspoken lingering beneath his calm exterior. Looking back, she realized the signs had been there from the beginning. She just hadn't wanted to see them. Arjun settled into the apartment with a routine so controlled and quiet that Riya often forgot another person lived under the same roof. He woke early, left with his backpack slung over one shoulder, and returned late at night, sometimes long after Riya had already gone to bed. His presence was almost ghost-like, marked only by the faint sound of the front door closing or the soft creak of footsteps in the hallway. Riya appreciated how little he disrupted her life, believing she had made the right decision in choosing him as a tenant. Still, something about his overly cautious behavior caught her attention from time to time. He evaded eye contact, spoke in short sentences, and always looked as though he was calculating every word before saying it. She tried to dismiss these observations as the awkwardness of a shy student, but Arjun's actions occasionally suggested something deeper. He kept his bedroom door locked even when he stepped out only for a moment, as though terrified someone might enter in his absence. When packages arrived for him, he grabbed them instantly, not allowing them to sit at the door for even a few minutes. It wasn't unusual to be protective of personal belongings, but Arjun behaved like a man guarding something more valuable than clothes or textbooks. Despite the strangeness, he continued to maintain a perfect facade of responsibility. He washed his dishes, kept shared spaces spotless, and always paid rent early. Riya found it difficult to complain about someone who caused her no trouble. Over time, she adjusted to his quietness, telling herself that some people were simply private. In fact, his presence made her feel slightly safer in an unfamiliar country. At least, she wasn't alone in the apartment anymore. But that comfort slowly faded when she began noticing small disturbances that didn't align with the harmless image Arjun presented. One evening, after returning from work, she found Arjun sitting in the dark living room. He wasn't watching TV or using his phone. He was simply staring at the blank wall. When she entered, he immediately stood up, muttered that he had been thinking, and shuffled back to his room. The encounter left Riya uneasy, especially because his expression had seemed empty, almost detached from reality. On another day, she overheard him talking to himself in a low, urgent tone inside his room. The conversation was too muffled to understand, but the intensity of his voice made her pause in the hallway. When he stepped out moments later, he acted as though nothing had happened. The subtle tension grew heavier over the next few weeks. She noticed he avoided engaging with neighbors and flinched whenever someone unexpectedly knocked on the door. He stored his belongings in odd places, rearranging them frequently, like he feared someone might be searching through his things. Even the scratch on his arm, which he had brushed off earlier, now seemed part of a larger mystery. Every time she saw him in short sleeves, there were new marks, small bruises, faint cuts and injuries he never explained. Though Riya tried to rationalize everything, a quiet warning settled in her mind. Arjun was polite, tidy, and respectful, but beneath that exterior was a tension that didn't match his claimed life as a simple student. Something about him didn't fit, and the more she observed, the more she felt that his calm presence was only a carefully maintained surface, hiding something much darker. One quiet Saturday afternoon, Riya decided to do a bit of cleaning around the apartment. Arjun had left early and mentioned he would be gone most of the day, giving her a sense of ease. She started with the living room and worked her way toward the hallway, humming softly as she dusted shelves and reorganized books. When she reached the shoe rack near the entrance, she noticed Arjun's backpack leaning against the wall. It must have slipped from its usual place, likely falling over when he left in a hurry. As she lifted it to set it upright, a small USB drive slid out from the side pocket and landed near her feet. Riya instinctively picked it up. Her first intention was simply to put it back, but there was something unsettling about the weight of it in her hand. It wasn't labeled, and for a moment, she hesitated. She knew it wasn't right to look through someone's personal belongings, yet a strange curiosity, shaped by weeks of small oddities, urged her to check. She convinced herself it might be something important that he had misplaced. After a few seconds of internal debate, she walked to her room, inserted the drive into her laptop and waited for the files to load. The screen opened to a neatly arranged folder. Inside were scanned newspaper articles, digital photos, and official documents. At first glance, they seemed random, but as she zoomed in on the first newspaper clipping, her fingers went cold. It was an article from an Indian news site reporting the disappearance of a young woman named Kavita Desai. The headline stated she had vanished under mysterious circumstances, and authorities suspected foul play. Riya felt uneasy but continued scrolling. The next file was a police statement summarizing early investigations. A man had been questioned but left the city suddenly before officers could dig further. There was a blurry image attached to the report. When she enlarged it, her breath caught in her throat. The man in the picture had the same jawline, the same eyes, the same build as Arjun. She leaned closer, hoping she was mistaken, but there was no doubt. It was him, less groomed, thinner, but unquestionably the same person. Her heart pounded as she opened more files. The documents detailed a timeline of Kavita's last interactions, witness statements mentioning a man following her days before her disappearance, and images of what appeared to be personal items recovered near the last place she was seen. Every new file added weight to the fear growing in her chest. She felt as if she had stepped into someone else's nightmare. Arjun didn't seem like the dangerous type, but appearances could be deceiving. She couldn't understand why he carried such files with him or why he needed to track these details. The thought occurred to her that he might be keeping the evidence as some twisted reminder, or perhaps as a way to control his own narrative. Panicking, she shut her laptop, removed the USB drive, and placed it back precisely where it had fallen from. She arranged the backpack to look untouched and stepped away from it, her palms sweating. She tried to calm herself, telling herself there could be innocent explanations, but her instincts screamed otherwise. For the rest of the day, every creak in the apartment made her jump. When Arjun finally returned that evening, with his usual calm expression, Riya felt an overwhelming sense of dread settle over her. She kept her distance, avoiding eye contact, and for the first time, she locked her bedroom door before going to bed. 2 days after discovering the disturbing files on Arjun's USB drive, Riya tried to carry on with her routine as if nothing had changed. But her nerves were constantly on edge. Every sound in the apartment felt sharper. Every creak of the floorboards seemed threatening. She avoided being alone in the same room with Arjun, using work as an excuse to stay out longer. Though she tried to appear normal, the fear that had taken root inside her refused to settle. She kept replaying the newspaper clippings in her mind, wondering how someone like him had ended up living under her roof. The thought of confronting him never crossed her mind. She knew instinctively that questioning him could be dangerous. Late one afternoon, when she was preparing tea in the kitchen, the doorbell rang. She wasn't expecting anyone. Anxiety shot through her as she approached the front door, peeking through the viewer cautiously. A man stood outside, holding a small folder and looking around as if checking the surroundings. He wasn't familiar, but something about his posture and presence seemed intentional, not casual like a delivery person. After a moment of hesitation, she opened the door just enough to speak. The man introduced himself as Samar Khanna, a private investigator. Hearing his name didn't ease her tension. She had never interacted with an investigator before, and didn't know what to expect. But when he mentioned that he was looking for someone named Arjun Varma, her heart skipped a beat. She couldn't hide her reaction, and he noticed. Calmly, he explained that he had followed a trail from India to multiple U.S. cities, searching for Arjun in connection with a missing woman named Kavita Desai. The mention of the same name she had seen on the USB made her palms grow sweaty. Samar opened his folder slightly to show her a printed photo. The man in the picture was unmistakably Arjun, though younger and with a different haircut. Riya felt a chill run down her spine. It was too much to dismiss as coincidence. Samar then explained that Arjun had fled India before police could finish questioning him. Technically, he wasn't charged with anything yet, but the circumstances around Kavita's disappearance and Arjun's sudden escape had raised alarms. According to Samar, Arjun had changed cities frequently, living briefly in different places and avoiding any connections that could expose his past. Riya listened in silence, her breath shallow. Everything she had suspected was being confirmed piece by piece, yet hearing it from someone else made the danger feel more real. Samar reassured her that he wasn't asking her to take risks. He only needed confirmation that Arjun was indeed staying there. After a long pause, she nodded. The fear she had been trying to suppress rose sharply as she admitted that Arjun was living in her home. Samar advised her to be cautious and to avoid confronting Arjun directly. He believed Arjun could sense when people grew suspicious and might react unpredictably. He promised to stay in the area and continue monitoring Arjun, waiting for an opportunity to gather stronger evidence. Before leaving, he handed her his card and urged her to call if anything unusual happened. When Riya closed the door behind him, she leaned against it, trying to steady herself. The apartment felt different now, heavier, as if the truth had changed the air she was breathing. Every step she took toward her room felt like she was moving deeper into a situation she didn't know how to escape. Arjun was no longer just an odd tenant. He was someone with a past filled with shadows, and she was living dangerously close to them. That night, after her conversation with Samar, Riya's nerves were stretched tight. She tried going about her evening normally, but her thoughts wouldn't slow down. Every word the investigator had said echoed in her mind, amplifying her fear. She tried reading, then watching something on her laptop, but nothing distracted her. Eventually she turned off her lights and sat in silence, listening for any sound from the hallway. Arjun had gone out earlier in the evening, and she was hoping he would return late, giving her more time to calm herself. But unexpectedly, the front door opened much earlier than usual. The soft click of the lock made her free. Arjun stepped inside with unusually measured footsteps. She heard him place something on the kitchen counter, maybe keys, maybe something else. Then she heard nothing. The stillness stretched into the air like a warning. Riya remained seated on her bed, barely breathing. After a minute, Arjun's footsteps moved slowly toward the hallway. She heard him pause right outside her door. Her heart raced so fast, she felt faint. The doorknob twitched slightly, turning just enough to make a soft metal click. He didn't push the door, but the message was clear. He was checking, testing, sensing something. Riya quickly reached for her phone with trembling hands and sent a silent message to Samar. "He's acting strange. Please come." She didn't dare call, afraid even the faintest sound might alert Arjun. After a moment that felt like an eternity, she heard him walk away from her door. The floor creaked as he moved toward the living room, then into his bedroom. The door shut softly. But Riya didn't feel safe. She locked her door and stayed still, listening to every sound in the apartment. The quietness was far worse than noise. She wished she could pack her bags and leave immediately. But she knew stepping into the hallway could put her directly in Arjun's path. All she could do was wait for Samar. Minutes crawled by like hours. She thought she heard movement from Arjun's room, soft shuffling. Something being dragged, something tapping lightly. The sounds were rhythmic, controlled and somehow unnerving. She pressed her ear to the door but didn't dare open it. She wondered if Arjun had become aware of her unease. Maybe he sensed she knew something. Maybe he had noticed his USB slightly shifted or realized someone had asked about him. Her phone vibrated suddenly, making her jump. It was a message from Samar. "I'm on my way." 10 minutes. Relief washed over her, but fear followed right behind. 10 minutes felt far too long. She strained her ears, praying Arjun wouldn't come out of his room again. But then she heard his door open. Slow footsteps echoed in the hallway, heading toward the kitchen, then back toward the living room. He was pacing. She imagined him walking with a blank expression, calculating something silently in his mind. A faint sound reached her, something metallic being picked up from the counter. She had no idea what it was, but her breath shuddered in fear. Then the pacing stopped. The apartment fell quiet again. Suddenly, heavy knocks thundered through the front door. Riya jumped in shock, her fear replaced with a flicker of hope. Samar had arrived sooner than she expected. She heard Arjun's footsteps pause abruptly, then move quickly. Something in his step sounded urgent, almost panicked. Riya pressed her back against her bedroom wall, gripping her phone tightly, praying the situation wouldn't turn into the disaster she feared. The knocks repeated, louder this time, echoing through the apartment. Arjun's door slammed shut, and the next few seconds felt like the stillness before a storm. The night had shifted. Arjun wasn't calm anymore, and Riya knew something was about to break. The loud knocking didn't stop, and each echo rattled the silence inside the apartment. Riya could hear her own heartbeat louder than anything else, pulsing in her ears as she waited for what would happen next. She didn't know if Arjun would open the door, hide, or do something far worse. Her entire body stayed pressed against her bedroom wall as if she could melt into it and disappear. The seconds crawled, stretched tight with tension. The knocking repeated a third time, firm and unyielding, and this time the sound of hurried movements came from Arjun's room. Something heavy scraped against the floor, followed by a dull thud, and then silence again. Riya strained to hear, every muscle in her body tightening as she tried to piece the noises together. It was impossible to ignore the fact that Arjun wasn't behaving like an innocent man surprised by a late-night visitor. Instead, he seemed to be preparing, moving things. maybe even hiding something. She couldn't help recalling the mysterious items she had found inside the metal trunk in the basement, items that clearly didn't belong to him. The memory made her skin crawl. Moments later, at the far end of the hallway, Riya heard the faintest sound, the basement door creaking open. Arjun was going downstairs. This realization sent a new wave of panic through her. Why the basement? What was he doing? Was he planning to escape through a hidden exit? Was he trying to hide evidence? Or worse, was he preparing something dangerous? Riya couldn't know, and the uncertainty was almost unbearable. The knocking from outside intensified. A muffled voice followed, calling out, though she couldn't make out the words. She assumed it was Samar, but Arjun didn't respond. His footsteps descended into the basement, slow, deliberate, heavy. Then came a clicking noise, like metal being shifted or a latch being forced into place. Riya imagined him securing something, maybe even barricading himself. Her fear grew into dread when she heard the faint dragging sound again. This time deeper beneath the floor, echoing through the stillness. It was the same noise she had heard earlier, when she peeked into the basement days before. The sound she had convinced herself was nothing. Now, it was unmistakable. Arjun was moving something large and heavy. It made the hair on her arms stand up to imagine what that could be. A sudden crash came from downstairs, something falling or being pushed aside roughly. Riya gasped softly and covered her mouth to remain silent. She didn't want Arjun to realize she was awake or listening. If he suspected she knew what he was hiding, she would be in greater danger than ever. Another set of knocks hit the front door, this time followed by a louder, clearer shout. She recognized Samar's voice calling her name, urging her to open the door. But she couldn't move. The hallway separating her room from the entrance felt impossibly long and exposed. If she tried to reach the door, she risked crossing paths with Arjun if he emerged from the basement at the wrong moment. She remained frozen until she heard a new sound, this time from outside. Metal rattled sharply, followed by a sudden forceful snap. Someone was trying to break the lock. Whether it was Samar or someone else, she couldn't tell, but she clung to the hope that help was near. Inside the apartment, the basement door creaked again. Arjun was coming back up. Riya's breath halted in her chest. The footsteps climbed slowly, almost as if he were listening for whatever was happening outside. Each step grew louder, heavier, until she could hear him pause at the top of the staircase. The lock at the front door gave one final crack. The door burst open. The moment the front door burst open, the entire apartment seemed to tremble. Riya flinched, instinctively shrinking back into the corner of her room as heavy footsteps stormed inside. She recognized Samar's voice shouting orders, confident and urgent, but she couldn't make out the words clearly. The sudden intrusion of noise felt like a collision with the hours of tension that had built up inside the apartment. It all blended into a chaotic blur, but one sound broke through it, clearly: Arjun's footsteps at the top of the basement stairs. Slow, cold, deliberate. Riya imagined him standing there, realizing someone had forced their way in, calculating what to do next. She heard Samar call out Arjun's name sharply, the tone carrying a mix of caution and authority. For a terrifying moment, there was nothing but silence, as if both men were assessing each other through the thin walls. Then everything erupted at once. A loud crash echoed from the hallway, followed by the heavy thudding of bodies colliding. Something toppled over, and the sound of metal clattered across the floor. Riya covered her ears as the chaos intensified. She didn't dare open her door. The hallway was too close, too exposed. If Arjun gained control, she would be the first person he reached. She remained still, her heart pounding so violently that her chest ached. Grunts, shouts, and the sounds of a struggle filled the apartment. She heard Samar yell something, maybe a warning or a command. Arjun's movements were different now, faster, desperate. His footsteps were no longer controlled. They tore across the hallway with erratic force. Riya could picture him fighting wildly, his calm mask finally shattered. Then came a sharp crash against the wall near her room, so close that dust shook from the corners. Riya jumped, pressing a hand over her mouth to suppress a cry. Another impact followed, this one even louder. It sounded like someone had been shoved or slammed hard. She feared Samar might be losing. The struggle continued, moving toward the living room. Something broke, a glass object, maybe a vase, shattering into hundreds of pieces. Riya winced at the sharpness of the sound. Then a voice rose above the noise, strained but commanding. She recognized Samar. He wasn't down yet. Moments later, the apartment door opened again, and multiple footsteps rushed inside. Reinforcements. The police. Orders were shouted, echoing through the cramped space. The chaos intensified briefly, then began to settle. Riya could still hear Arjun, but faintly now, a mixture of angry breathing and the muffled resistance of someone being restrained. Handcuffs clicked, metal tightening, followed by the heavy, defeated thud of someone being pushed to the floor. After what felt like an eternity, the noises tapered off. The building finally fell still again, but the silence was different this time. It wasn't the suffocating quiet of fear, it was the breathless pause after danger has passed. A gentle knock came on Riya's door. This time, she knew she could answer it. She unlocked it with trembling hands, and when she stepped into the hallway, she saw Samar standing there, bruised and exhausted but steady. Behind him, two officers held Arjun pinned to the floor, his expression blank yet simmering with a darkness she had only glimpsed before. Her knees felt weak at the sight. The man who had lived quietly under her roof, who had seemed harmless and withdrawn, looked nothing like the person she thought she knew. There was no calmness now, only the exposed truth of someone deeply dangerous. Samar reassured her softly, telling her she was safe, but her mind was still reeling. The apartment she once considered peaceful was now marked by overturned furniture, broken objects, and the weight of the truth that had always been hiding in plain sight. As the police escorted Arjun out, Riya stared at the open doorway, knowing her life would never return to the way it was before. The night had revealed everything, the danger, the secrets, the lies she had unknowingly lived with. And although the immediate threat was gone, the terror of what could have happened would haunt her long after the footsteps faded from the hallway. In the days following Arjun's arrest, the apartment no longer felt like a home. It had become a place filled with reminders of everything Riya had narrowly escaped. The overturned furniture was picked up, the broken glass swept away, and police officers came and went as they examined every corner of the space. Yet even after the physical mess was cleared, an invisible heaviness lingered. Whenever she stood in the hallway where the struggle had taken place, she felt phantom echoes of that night. The shouts, the pounding footsteps, the crash of bodies hitting the wall. She tried to convince herself that it was all over, but her mind refused to settle. Investigators worked quickly, gathering evidence from Arjun's belongings, especially the items discovered in the basement. The metal trunk contained scarves, jewelry, and small personal objects that belonged to more than one woman. The discovery shocked everyone involved. Detectives believed these were trophies collected over the years, each item tied to a victim whose story had not yet surfaced. The news spread through the local Indian community in New Jersey, sending waves of fear and disbelief. Riya's life, once private and uneventful, suddenly became the center of a terrifying mystery. She was interviewed multiple times, asked to recount her experiences, her observations, and the moment she first suspected something was wrong. Each time she spoke about it, her voice trembled despite her attempts to appear strong. Investigators assured her that she had played a crucial role in exposing Arjun's crimes, that her actions had likely prevented future victims. While the words offered comfort, they also intensified the weight of what she had unknowingly been living with. The idea that she had shared a home with someone accused of taking lives left her shaken to the core. A few days later, Samar visited her again. His face carried new lines of exhaustion, but his tone was gentle. He explained that Arjun had been linked to Kavita Desai's disappearance, and with the additional evidence from the trunk, authorities were now looking into other missing women from different cities. Samar assured her that Arjun would remain in custody, and the case was growing stronger. Riya listened quietly, nodding when appropriate, but her thoughts drifted to the nights she had walked past Arjun's locked door, unaware of the darkness behind it. Feeling unsafe in the apartment, she decided to move out as soon as she could. She found a smaller place across town, somewhere quiet but not isolated, somewhere she could rebuild a sense of normalcy. Packing her things was harder than she expected. Every room brought back memories, not of comfort, but of suspicion, fear, and the constant tension she had lived under without fully realizing it. When she finally locked the apartment door for the last time, she felt relief mixed with sadness. It wasn't just a building she was leaving behind, it was the version of herself who once trusted too easily. Even in her new home, sleep didn't come easily. Every unfamiliar sound made her sit up. Every shadow made her heart skip. Time slowly softened the fear, but it never truly vanished. She learned to be vigilant, to question more, to trust less. Her story circulated online, transformed into warnings and whispered conversations among newly arrived immigrants. People praised her bravery, but she didn't feel brave. She felt lucky to still be alive. Lucky that Samar had shown up when he did. Months later, as she sat on her balcony watching the evening light fade, she realized the biggest change was not the move or the scars of fear, but the understanding that danger can hide behind the quietest smile, the calmest voice, the most ordinary presence. She had let someone into her home thinking she was helping a stranger, never imagining the nightmare lurking beneath his silence. Her life moved forward, slowly but steadily, shaped by the lesson she would never forget. The most harmless-looking person can sometimes carry the darkest past, and a single act of kindness can unexpectedly open the door to unimaginable danger.